the truth about EV fire risk and why people pretend it isn't real. Well, the evangelists, they pretend it isn't real, but it is. Let's have the conversation people keep trying to avoid or ignore or deflect, because every time an EV goes up, you get the same chorus. EV fires are rare. Stop spreading misinformation. ICE cars burn more. Yeah, and if you repeat it often enough, it becomes true, does it? Today I'm not here to argue with the article. I've linked it below. It's the tech startup CMO, and it's a great blog. I love reading it. They bring up some important points, not just about EVs, about quite a lot of things. In fact, to be honest, I'd think I'd written it. EV battery fires aren't just a bit of smoke and a tow truck. They're a different category of emergency altogether. They've even got their own category now. And yes, I also think they're underreported. Not because of some James Bond conspiracy, but because the data is messy, inconsistent, and reporting varies by country. There's also more and more reports coming in all the time. It's almost like somebody's just taken the top off Pandora's box and all these EV fires are coming out. And it's not like EVA England say, because it happened abroad it doesn't count. It does, because it will happen here. Burying your head in the sand is no good. Even burying an EV in the sand doesn't put it out. It keeps burning. All you can do is cool it down until it stops. So if you're easily offended by facts, this might be a difficult watch for you. EV fires are rare. The comfort blanket argument. Let's start with the bit no one wants to say out loud. An EV fire can be catastrophic, not just to the car, but to everything around it. Buildings, car parks, even ships have been involved in major incidents. And here's the part that should make everyone sit up. Some EV fires don't follow the neat little script that people prefer. They can happen while charging. They can happen after a crash, when the battery pack is compromised. And yes, there are documented cases where they ignite parked up, not charging, no obvious damage. They just go up in smoke. But don't worry, I'm sure that's all totally fine, because someone on the internet said ice fires are worse. Thermal runaway, the bit the PR brigade skims over. When lithium ion cells go into thermal runaway, you can get a chain reaction that escalates frighteningly fast. The article references temperatures over 1,200 degrees centigrade. That's not a small fire, that's a furnace. And it's not just heat, cells can rupture. You can get violent flare-ups, and the whole thing can become incredibly dangerous for occupants and first responders. But sure, keep telling people it's rare, like that's the end of the conversation. Just chuck water on it. Well, brilliant plan. Brilliant plan, that. Another thing people love doing is pretending EV fires are the same as petrol fires. They're not. The article's point was blunt. Water can cool temporarily, but it's not a magic off switch for a battery and thermal runaway, like it is for an ice car. You can put an ice car out with water. There's also reignition, the lovely feature where fire can come back hours, days, or months, because damaged cells remain chemically unstable. It can go back into thermal runaway months later on the back of a tow truck, in a salvage yard, wherever. That Tesla, he'd run over some debris. It set fire in an underground garage days or weeks later. So if your argument is, yeah, but the fire brigade will sort it, you might want to read what the fire services themselves say about EV firefighting capability and training gaps. Toxic gases. Again, another part we pretend doesn't exist. Battery fires can produce a nasty cocktail of gases. The article mentions hydrofluoric acid, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen cyanide amongst them. So it's not just a car on fire. It's potentially hazmat level smoke, with real risks to bystanders and firefighters. But again, I'm sure it's fine because an EV influencer said ice cars burn too. Never mentions the fact that these 3 or 4 firefighters still off work 6 months later after the car fire, the EV fire had gone out. They were cleaning up and the EV discharged, or off-gassed as they called it, a puff of white smoke which has basically destroyed one of the fireman's lungs. He can't walk very far. Another one has an oily substance coming out of his skin, and they are being treated with, well, I don't know what you think of the COVID vaccines, but they're basically being treated with, I don't know, miracle cure. So I hope they're okay, and I hope this cure that's never been tried before works on them. But in all honesty, I doubt it. And it's an EV fire which is done for them. Changed their lives forever. If they get back on the job, do you think they'll go to another EV fire? Do you think they'll go to a garage in future where there's 100 EVs on fire? What will happen if a garage catches fire and the wind's blowing your way onto your housing estate? Will it wipe out a whole housing estate? Will everybody on the housing estate become ill, not be able to breathe properly, develop sores? Honestly, it doesn't bear thinking about. Ice fires versus EV fires. Not which is holy, but what happens in the real world. This is where people get emotional. No one's saying ice fires are cuddly. They're dangerous, but they're often more predictable. You usually get warning signs, smells of fuel, signs of fuel leaks, overheating, smoke. The warning window matters. It gives people a chance to pull over and get out. Whereas with battery events, the escalation can be sudden and violent, and that changes everything about the risk profile. Show me the numbers. Okay, but don't cherry pick them, because that's what you're doing. Here's the honest truth. There isn't one neat global data set that settles this forever. Reporting differs by country, conditions differ, fleet ages differ, battery chemistries differ. So anyone claiming definitive proof in one sentence is usually trying to sell you something, an EV. That said, the article lands on this headline finding. EVs are between 1.5 times and 2 times more likely to catch fire than ICE cars per vehicle. And if you're about to say, yeah, but there's more ICE cars, so the raw number is bigger, congratulations, you've just explained the exact media misrepresentation. The article calls out, people compare total counts instead of per vehicle probability. What if everything becomes EV? The question nobody wants on the evening news. This is the bit that should be headline news, but it won't be. The article runs a projection for if all vehicles were EVs. For the USA, it quotes EV fire probability 0.134%, estimated 388,600 fires per year if the whole fleet was EV. For China, it quotes EV fire probability 0.082%, estimated 247,640 fires per year if the whole fleet was EV. And it concedes that could mean 2 to 3 times increase in annual vehicle fires compared to today. Now, will these numbers change the better battery tech? Possibly. Even the article acknowledges long-term improvements could happen. But here's the point, we're not living in long-term. We're living in the here and now with the batteries and infrastructure we actually have in the present. My view, underreporting isn't tinfoil hat. It's incentives and messy data. And this is where I'll say what everyone's thinking. If reporting is inconsistent and the narrative is politically and commercially sensitive, then yes, it's not hard to see how EV fire risk can be downplayed, miscategorized, or simply not highlighted. Not because they're hiding it, but because it's complicated, is a fantastic excuse to avoid uncomfortable conclusions. So here's the question. Even if EV fires were equal in frequency to ICE fires, which this article argues they're not, the severity, toxicity, unpredictability, and the firefighting challenge makes them a different level of risk. Consumers deserve straight data-led information, not PR slogans. So would you feel safer in an EV or an ICE car? Of course, here's the other thing that nobody seems to consider. The average age of an ICE car on the roads in the UK today is 10.1 years. The average age of an EV in the UK at the moment is 2.6 years. So ICE cars are 4 times older, and I would think therefore the probability of there being faults on an ICE car is higher than being on an EV. When EVs get to the same age as ICE cars and you have all the problems that they've got, then we're gonna have to call the army in to help with firefighting, because it's just the figures will go through the roof. It's just common sense. It's just obvious. The more they are on the road, the older they get, the more fires they are, and we already know that they're way worse than an ICE fire. So just imagine that when you get to half. Say they're 4 times, well, they're not 4 times worse than an ICE fire. They're 10 times worse. They use 10 times more water to cool them down and put them out. And they're more dangerous. There's hazardous gases. EV fires are going to overtake ICE fires in severity very quickly. Let me know in the comments. And I want real answers, not copy and paste talking points. If you found this useful, like the video and subscribe, and share it with someone who still thinks rare means impossible. An evangelist. Idiot.